Can report that all of Orion's systems are performing magnificently at this hour. At an altitude of just under 6,000 nautical miles, we did lock up on the tracking and data relay satellite system. So Orion's telemetry is now being processed through the TDRS network. This worked in concert with the Deep Space Network throughout the course of the mission. And now that we're on TDRS the rest of the way, we'll be able to have real-time data through our tracking and data relay satellite system constellation. We're just 11.5 minutes away from crew module, service module separation, the first major milestone on the road home in this final phase of Orion's 25.5-day mission. So let's take a visual and interactive look at what is coming up for Orion's journey back to Earth. Let's go back to NASA's Philip Hargrove at the moon board.
Thank you. Welcome back to the moon board. So we're going to talk a bit about the European Service Module and the Orion Crew Module. So as we know, these two systems have been working in tandem for a really long time, and that extends beyond just this Artemis I test flight for the past 26 days. So back in 2019 was when they were first integrated and pieced together. In 2020 was when they were fully assembled, including the solar panels and the protective fairings that protected them during launch. And then they were finally attached to the launch abort system and made it on top of SLS in October of 2021, prior to, of course, launch on November 16th, just 26 days ago. So we know that one of the primary test objectives of this mission is to make sure that this heat shield at the bottom of the crew module is able to safely bring our astronauts home from deep space. Now, for reference, when we bring astronauts home from the International Space Station, they're coming in at about 17,000 miles per hour. But today, Orion is coming in at 25,000 miles per hour. So we're coming in way hotter, way faster than we have done before. So we need some new heat shield technology. And we also need some additional hardware in order to slow us down and make that really happen. So let's talk about what that looks like. So this forward segment of the Orion Crew Module is called the forward bay cover. And this section is actually designed to completely be pulled off by 3 parachutes. So we have 3 parachutes that's going to pull that off. We have 2 drogue parachutes that are going to come out after that to slow us down a bit. We have 3 pilot parachutes that are going to pull our mains out. And then the stars of the show are 3 main parachutes that measure up to 116 feet in diameter each. So that gives us 11 parachutes that it takes to get us safely back home. So now that we know a little bit about what that hardware looks like, we can take a look at what that journey actually looked like. So as we know, we had a 7-day return transit. And as we approached the Earth, the service module and the crew module separated from one another. And the service module is going to burn up in the atmosphere above the Pacific Ocean. As that happens, the Orion Crew Module is going to use its reaction control thrusters to do a 180 flip and point that heat shield towards the atmosphere as we target re-entry. So a really important phase here is entry interface. This is at an altitude of about 400,000 feet, and this is where we define a lot of our entry conditions, such as the flight path angle and the velocity. Now this is really important because if you come in at too shallow of an angle, you may bounce right off the atmosphere and not even re-enter. But if you come in too steeply, you're going to experience forces that are beyond the design of your spacecraft. So what we're going to do today is actually toe the line and do a nominal skip maneuver where we're actually going to bounce off once. That allows us to have a steeper re-entry, and that actually increases the heating, allowing us to really test the capability of that heat shield. And we will also be minimizing the G loading, which leads to a softer ride for the Moonican and in the future for our Artemis astronauts. Now, once we do that, the atmosphere is going to slow us down pretty significantly, but we'll still be going over 300 miles per hour. And then we will slow down to 20 miles per hour after that sequence of 11 parachute deployments. Now, once we splash down west of California, we will have these red inflatables that will make sure that no matter what orientation we hit the water at, we will be right side up. And then the USS Portland is going to recover the capsule and bring it back to the US Naval Station in San Diego. Now, there's a really large team comprised of US Navy, Air Force, NASA, contractors who worked really hard to prepare for today. So I am super excited to see them welcome Orion home. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Philip. We are coming up on the critical stuff leading up to Orion's return to Earth and its splashdown in the Pacific, just 7 minutes away now from crew module, service module separation. That European service module has worked like a champ throughout the course of the mission. The service module, which of course housed the solar arrays and all of the other propulsive functioning for Orion throughout the course of the mission, has been monitored in the European Service Module Control Room in Noordwijk in the Netherlands, where that team of flight controllers is eagerly awaiting the completion of the service module's work just a few minutes from now, when it will pyrotechnically separate from the crew module, leaving the crew module on its own. Entry interface is scheduled just 26 minutes from now. We'll be receiving reports from Flight Director Judd Freeling and his team of flight controllers throughout Orion's descent back into the Earth's atmosphere and through all of the parachute deployment sequence events leading up to splashdown that is scheduled at 11:39 and 42 seconds a.m. Central Time, 9:39 and 42 seconds a.m. Pacific Time. One thing worth noting is once Orion splashes down in the Pacific, it will stabilize in one of two positions, either pointed up, which is called stable 1, or pointed down in stable 2. The crew module uprighting system, known as the CMUS, deploys a series of 5 bright orange helium-filled bags on the top of the capsule that will either flip Orion right side up or keep it right side up in its stable 1 position. Those 5 bags are packed in hard containers and installed atop the capsule inside the structural gussets between the parachutes and other equipment. They're inflated with helium gas that is stored in pressure vessels located close by the bags. Each bag has its own independent inflation system. The CMUS, or crew module uprighting system, initiates after landing and opens up a valve for helium to flow into those uprighting bags. It is considered, at least operational, that we have 4 out of those 5 bags to inflate to maintain a stable 1 configuration for Orion to enable Navy divers to approach the vehicle. One of the first things that they'll be looking for is any leakage of toxic gas or toxic fuel from the vehicle. Assuming there is no such leak and that Orion appears to be in good shape, then they'll begin the methodical process of approaching the vehicle with other personnel and other Navy assets in order to begin the securing of Orion on the ocean for its towing back into the well deck of the USS Portland. We're under 4 minutes now until the crew module and service module separate from one another. We'll be standing by for all of that. You can see in this telemetry-driven animation that Orion is currently traveling just under 17,000 miles an hour, just under 4,000 miles away from Earth, and a hefty 254,000 miles from the moon, which of course was its target, in distant retrograde orbit, flying around the moon for its outbound powered flyby at the beginning of the mission to move to a distance of some 268,000 miles away from Earth, farther than any human-rated spacecraft designed to return to Earth had ever been designed to do, surpassing the distance record established 52 years ago during the Apollo 13 mission. Here in Mission Control, the flight dynamics folks and the guidance, navigation, and control folks have put up a graphic which is essentially the ground track for Orion as it will make its way across the southern Indian Ocean passing the northwest coast of Australia en route to its ultimate trajectory that will carry it across the Pacific. It will be moving from south to north across the Pacific Ocean to the splashdown zone, almost a direct straight line towards the point of splashdown, which will be west of Baja California. Now just under 2 minutes until crew module, service module separation. Now just 1 minute away from crew module, service module separation. We'll be standing by for confirmation of that from the Mechanical Systems Officer here at Mission Control. "30 seconds until separation. This will come at an altitude of 3,200 statute miles. "10 seconds until SEP. We have confirmation of separation. Orion flying on its own. Again, the separation occurred right on time at 11 a.m. and 11 seconds Central Time, with Orion 3,200 statute miles away from Earth. The service module, the European service module, has done its job. So with Orion flying on its own, we're about 18.5 minutes away now from the point of entry interface, where Orion will be put through its paces. This is where the heat shield will begin to feel the effects of peak heating of 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit on the heat shield, and the beginning of 2 blackout periods where the plasma around the vehicle will build up such that it will block data and communications between Mission Control and the spacecraft itself. Orion continues to fly smoothly on, all of its systems in excellent shape. Less than 17 minutes until entry interface. And the crew module raise burn that we thought was not going to be needed is being conducted. Just basically a fine-tuning of the orientation and the angle, a 16-second firing of the thrusters, and a good burn reported, 8.12 feet per second in a change in velocity. So the raise burn was executed. That will further fine-tune Orion's path at the proper azimuth or orientation, where the heat shield is at its optimum angle, to begin the repulsion of the heat that will build up around the heat shield at the time that we begin entry interface, just about 15.5 minutes from now. So the crew module service module separation went off as planned. The raise maneuver was executed at 11:03 and 41 seconds Central Time. Again, the raise maneuver was executed. Orion now flying at the proper orientation for entry interface into the Earth's atmosphere. Entry interface is scheduled at 11:20 and 14 seconds a.m. Central Time at an altitude of 400,000 feet. At that point, Orion will be traveling 24,464 miles an hour with a range to splashdown of 3,659 statute miles. Flight controllers reporting a solid lock with the tracking and data relay satellite system, receiving data that's being processed through the TDRS network. Just a reminder that after we pass into the Earth's atmosphere, at the speed at which we're going, and with the temperatures expected to build up very quickly for peak heating around the heat shield of Orion, we will begin the first of two blackout periods, the first of which is scheduled to begin at 11:20 and 16 seconds a.m. Central Time and will last about 4 minutes and 48 seconds. At that time, entry guidance, which has been stored on board, pre-programmed commanding for Orion to continue to point its way toward the splashdown zone, will take over. The first blackout period should end around 11:25 and 4 seconds Central Time. That will set the stage for the skip entry, basically the maneuver that will enable Orion to dip into the Earth's atmosphere and skip back out of the Earth's atmosphere and dip back into the Earth's atmosphere like a rock, a flat rock on a pond. That will continue to dissipate energy and heat on the spacecraft, and is a maneuver that data will be gathered for to try to bring in multiple splashdown sites for crewed missions in the future. The second of the two blackout periods is scheduled to begin at 11:29 and 3 seconds a.m. Central Time, and that will last for about 2 minutes and 50 seconds till about 11:31 and change. That'll be the final blackout period, after which we should lock up solidly for the remaining 8 minutes or so until splashdown. This is Mission Control Houston, 12 minutes away from entry interface. Everything is going by the book so far here in Mission Control, very quiet on the loops. Entry Flight Director Judd Freeling and his team of flight controllers watching carefully over their data as they oversee the arrival of Orion for its splashdown site west of Baja, California. Time to splash down 31 minutes. Less than 11 minutes now until entry interface. During the period of the two blackouts, and even after we have emerged from the second of the two blackouts, Orion, through a series of pre-programmed commands stored on board, will conduct a series of role reversals. This is very much like space shuttles conducted during their entries back to Earth, where it will roll to the left and then back to the right, banking roll reversals that will bleed off excess energy, excess inertia, and speed, and control the thermal characteristics of the vehicle as it heads towards its subsonic point, where it will go under Mach 1. It will go subsonic at about 11:34 and 55 seconds a.m. Central Time, some 5 minutes before splashdown. If everything goes as planned, Orion will reach an altitude of 40,000 feet at 11:35 a.m. Central Time, just about a minute before forward bay cover chute deploy begins. The series of 11 chutes, 3 that will pull the forward bay cover off of the top of the crew module. That'll be followed by the deployment of the drogue chutes, and then the 3 large main parachutes, 3 orange and white parachutes. That'll be the moment we'll be waiting for. Orion now 28.5 minutes until splashdown. Orion is approaching the northwest coast of Australia. 27.5 minutes until splashdown. We're just 8 minutes away from the point at which Orion will dip into the Earth's atmosphere and begin what basically is a hellish entry, where temperatures around the spacecraft will raise to about 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That's half as hot as the outer surface of the sun. And correction, Orion is actually traveling over the South Pacific at the moment, moving from south to north. Just 7.5 minutes until entry interface. And this view from a camera inside the cabin of Orion, this doesn't look like much at the moment, but it will soon when it shows the forward bay cover jettisoning and the initiation of the parachute deployment system. Entry interface less than 6.5 minutes from now. Just to recap, the crew module, the Orion crew module, separated from the European service module about 14.5 minutes ago, right on target as it was planned, and a short raise maneuver, a 16-second firing of Orion's thrusters, oriented the vehicle, raising it just a tad so that its heat shield was at the proper orientation in the direction of travel to begin entry interface in about 5 minutes at an altitude of 400,000 feet above the Earth. Orion is making its way south to north across the Pacific Ocean. Currently traveling at 23,000 miles an hour. We're about 5 minutes away from entering the first of the 2 blackout periods, which will last about 4 minutes and 48 seconds. A journey that began with the power of the launch of the Space Launch System 25.5 days ago, about to reach its final minutes in the searing heat of re-entry, where temperatures around Orion will build up to 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Just under 4 minutes until entry interface. Once again, at entry interface, which we will reach about 3 minutes from now, Orion will be at an altitude of 400,000 feet, traveling just under 25,000 miles an hour, with a range to splashdown of 3,659 statute miles. Within seconds after reaching entry interface, we'll begin the first of the 2 blackout periods that will last just under 5 minutes, about 4 minutes and 48 seconds. And here's the ground track for Orion as it passes well to the west of South America. We're just 1 minute, 44 seconds away from entry interface, moving from south to north to its splashdown target west of Baja California. Just 1 minute away from entry interface. And this view from the cabin camera, looking out of the upper hatch of Orion, you can see the limb of the Earth. We're going to be losing all of the data here shortly once we enter into the Earth's atmosphere and begin the first of the two blackout periods. Standing by for entry interface and the first of the two blackout periods. We are now in the entry phase. Entry interface has begun. Entry interface at 400,000 feet. Orion traveling just under 25,000 miles an hour. We've gone into the first blackout period. This is a visualization based on what should be happening at the moment, where the temperatures around the heat shield are reaching about 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. This is the moment of truth for Orion. We should be coming out of this first blackout period just under 4 minutes from now. Orion should be traveling about 23,326 miles an hour at the moment. Range to splashdown, 3,125 statute miles. Again, this is a visualization of what should be happening with Orion at the moment, although we are in a blackout period that should end about 3 minutes and 15 seconds from now. Once we emerge from this first blackout period, we'll conduct the skip entry maneuver that will further dissipate heat and energy and begin a very, very dramatic reduction in the velocity of Orion as it approaches its splashdown site. Clocks here in Mission Control showing the sequence of events yet to come. The first blackout period to end about 2 minutes and 18 seconds from now. The second of the two blackout periods would begin about 6 minutes from now for about 7 minutes, followed by the jettisoning of the forward bay cover. That will begin the sequence of the deployment of the parachutes. First, a pair of drogue chutes, 3 pilot parachutes that will then pull 3 main parachutes to begin the final moments of Orion's descent back to its splashdown in the Pacific Ocean. 1 minute to go until we come out of this first blackout period. When we emerge from this first blackout period, we'll be at an altitude of 274,000 feet, traveling just under 17,000 miles an hour with a range to splashdown of 2,000 statute miles. Standing by for a reacquisition of signal. And we have data from Orion. Orion out of the blackout period. Flight Dynamics reports that Orion is right on the money, coming right down the pike. A good view out of the cabin camera looking out of the upper hatch of Orion. We should be performing the skip entry maneuver momentarily. Good communications established with Orion. The second blackout period to begin about 2 minutes from now. Orion is at the apogee of the skip entry maneuver, beginning the second in a series of role reversals, again banking maneuvers to bleed off excess inertia and to dissipate heat around the spacecraft. The start of the second blackout period, about 1 minute and 13 seconds from now, will come at an altitude of 270,000 feet, with Orion traveling about 16,400 miles an hour, range to splashdown less than 1,000 miles. Coming up on the start of the second blackout period. We should be in that second blackout period right now. Orion approaching a velocity of 20 times the speed of sound. If all goes as planned, we should be out of the blackout period with a solid lockup on the vehicle at 11:31 and 46 seconds a.m. Central Time. This is Mission Control Houston, the airborne WB-57, one of the airborne assets to track Orion's return to Earth, has visual acquisition of the vehicle. We should be coming out of this second and final blackout about 30 seconds from now. And helos flying off the deck of the USS Portland now have a visual acquisition of Orion as well, at an altitude of 174,000 feet, traveling 12,600 miles an hour, range to splashdown 288 statute miles. This view on the deck of the USS Portland. And there is a view out of the cabin camera of Orion as it continues a series of role reversals. We have data back from the spacecraft. Flight Dynamics reports Orion straight and narrow on a true course toward its splashdown site. Forward bay covered jettisoning less than 3.5 minutes from now. (150,000 feet off the ocean). Orion now traveling at Mach 10. Orion's speed now down to Mach 6. Two minutes until forward bay covered jettisoning. Orion 100,000 feet now. The spacecraft about to go subsonic. "45 seconds until forward bay cover jettisoning. Orion now at 50,000 feet. Forward bay cover jettisoning pyros are armed. "25,000 feet. Drogues have been deployed. Two good drogue shoots reported by the recovery team out in the Pacific. The descent rate is right on the money. Orion's velocity now down to 282 miles an hour. Range to splashdown 1.5 miles. 10,000 feet now. And we're on mains. 5,000 feet. Reefing in progress. Three good main shoots for Orion. We have three fully inflated main chutes. Time to splashdown 90 seconds. Perfect descent rate reported. And there it is, high over the Pacific, America's new ticket to ride to the moon and beyond now in view. Orion under its chutes descending toward splashdown. Orion in the perfect orientation for splashdown, just seconds away. 1,000 feet. Good descent rate. "500 feet. Splashdown. From Tranquility Base to Taurus Littrow to the tranquil waters of the Pacific, the latest chapter of NASA's journey to the moon comes to a close. Orion, back on Earth. Unofficial splashdown time, 11:40 and 30 seconds a.m. Central Time. At a mission elapsed time of 25 days, 10 hours, 54 minutes, 50 seconds. That's unofficial. Splashing down off the coast of Baja California. The crew module uprighting system now being inflated for the bags currently being inflated. And we have a report that Orion is stable 1, upright, the way it should be. Once again, splashdown occurring at 11:40 a.m. Central Time, 9:40 a.m. Pacific Time, west of Baja California, after a textbook entry for the Orion spacecraft, bringing its 25-and-a-half-day mission to an end. Orion's recovery beacon is on. We have confirmation that 4 out of the 5 crew module uprighting system bags have fully inflated, standing by for word on the 5th one. But Orion is in great shape, stable 1, just in the orientation that had been expected. This is Mission Control Houston. Once again, the Orion spacecraft, having completed a journey of 1.4 million miles, bobbing gently in the Pacific Ocean. 4 out of its 5 crew module uprighting system bags have been deployed. We're standing by for word on the 5th. However, irrespective of that, it is in stable 1 configuration, in good shape, according to the recovery team. And we are now receiving word that all 5 of the crew module uprighting system bags are fully inflated. So that's exactly what we had hoped for. Orion safely bobbing up and down in the Pacific Ocean. This is Mission Control Houston. You're looking at the Orion spacecraft that splashed down about 6.5 minutes ago at 11:40 a.m. Central Time, 9:40 a.m. Pacific Time. We are estimating that it splashed down around 5 nautical miles away from the USS Portland. The recovery ship and Navy boats and divers will be approaching the vehicle before long. The spacecraft is in what is called a stable 1 configuration, upright, just the way we had expected it to be. 5 perfectly inflated crew module uprighting system bags, maintaining a nice gentle configuration for Orion. First of the Navy helicopters now approaching the vehicle. And here in Mission Control, some of Orion's systems no longer needed are being powered down. Many of them will stay powered up for the next 2 hours while we conduct a series of test objectives to characterize the thermal conditioning of the spacecraft. That will be important for future data for crewed missions to determine how long the crews can remain comfortable inside a vehicle returning from the moon. We also will be conducting tests of the beacon and SARSAT system for maintaining tracking of the spacecraft, for recovery forces that will be approaching the spacecraft in the future. And coming up in the next hour and a half will be the reactivation of an ammonia boiler system that will provide cooling in the spacecraft, as it will when crews return from their missions on board Orion. This is Mission Control Houston. Reports from the USS Portland indicate that the first of two Navy helicopters flying in the vicinity of Orion, which is about 5 nautical miles away from the ship, indicate no damage to the spacecraft and no hazardous fuel leaking from the spacecraft. A good view of the helicopters and the initial Navy boats that will be approaching Orion a short time from now. Once again, the splashdown occurring at 11:40 a.m. Central Time, 9:40 a.m. Pacific Time. This is Mission Control Houston. Orion in the Pacific Ocean, having splashed down at 11:40 a.m. Central Time, 9:40 a.m. Pacific Time, around 5 nautical miles or so from the USS Portland, a textbook entry for the vehicle. On the USS Portland at this hour, my colleague Daryl Nell from the Kennedy Space Center, who's with the Exploration Ground Systems Recovery Team. Daryl, how did it look to you? It certainly looked textbook to us here.
I'd say that's a great description, Rob. Perfectly landed here in the Pacific Ocean, and that's been confirmed by the operations manager that I just spoke to. Watching it from the deck as an observer, we have, as you can see, some broken clouds in the sky, like right around 3,000 feet. But we saw those 3 full main parachutes pop out. It was a beautiful sight, probably just about, several thousand feet in the sky, and then we watched that slow descent as the Orion crew module made its way down to the Pacific Ocean. Saw the splash, and then, of course, the assets aboard the USS Portland here immediately started making their way towards the splashdown site, and as you see live now, they are close to being next to the capsule. Now, the helicopters that you see flying there, those are MH-60s. We have 2 of them in the air, and they are right now gathering high quality, high definition imagery of the capsule in the water. There's a spotter aboard. We have photographers as well. The doors are completely open on both sides of the helicopters, and so you can see them flying at a circular track around the splashdown location. They have marked, if you can see it, you can see what looks like smoke coming off a location just to the left there. That is the boats having marked location where some of the debris has come down, the debris that was part of the separation event, part of the parachutes opening event. So you have the sabot as well as the lid from the parachutes. All of that is being tracked by the Sasquatch team, and the Navy boats are marking that with floatable smoke grenades. All of that hardware the team wants to recover because there's valuable information and data in it. The helicopters will be out for another 20 minutes gathering imagery. You can see one of them getting very close to the crew module. There is an GSS camera, ultra high definition, 8K, which is gathering imagery. We are currently on course to go right by the splashdown location, so we are right about 3.5 miles and closing. We are going to a point that's going to be 1 mile out. That's our next waypoint, 1 mile out from the splashdown location. One of the things we're waiting for is for ammonia boil off, and that's why the Navy boats are not yet next to the capsule. We're still going to wait that out. The amount of time that that's going to take is has not been determined. They have allowed for as much as 2 hours. The ammonia on the capsule is used for cooling purposes, to keep the cabin cool for crew. Of course, there's no crew in this capsule, but for future missions, it will certainly be an important part of keeping the astronauts cool during the heat of reentry. But for now, they're going to vent off that ammonia, and as they do that, it's not quite safe to get close to the capsule with the Navy divers. So of course we'll keep our eyes fixed to the location, our cameras as well. The USS Portland standing by for our next waypoint, 1 mile from the splashdown site. And then once the completion of the ammonia boil off, the Navy boats will be going in. A spectacular sight from out here, Rob. Toss it back to you.
Thanks, Daryl. Back here in Mission Control, the entry Flight Director Judd Freeling on the left. To his left, Flight Director Rick Henfling. And with me on console here, probably none more important than the NASA Administrator, Bill Nelson. Senator, thank you for joining us today.
Rob, I'm overwhelmed. I'd say it's good to see you, but this is an extraordinary day.
I remember years ago when I saw you return on Columbia from your mission into space, and it all conjures up a tremendous amount of memories. Orion back on Earth, having circumnavigated the moon, having survived a critical test of its heat shield, I think you have to be hesitant to celebrate and throw confetti a little bit too early, but it certainly is an important achievement, is it not?
It's historic because we are now going back into space, into deep space, with a new generation. Kennedy just stunned everybody with the Apollo generation and said that we were going to achieve what we thought was impossible, and did that in a short period of time. And many things have happened since, but we knew we were going back, but we knew we were going back to the moon just to continue to explore outward into the cosmos. And so that's why this is a defining day. It is one that marks new technology, a whole new breed of astronaut, a vision for the future that captures the DNA of particularly Americans, although we do this as an international venture. And that DNA is we are adventurers, we are explorers. We always have a frontier, and that frontier is now to continue exploring the heavens.
We had to wait a while for Artemis to finally get to the point where the Space Launch System got us underway back on November 16th, but once it did, these engineers and the other members of the team's front room, back room, they've been pretty giddy over the amount of data that they've required and how this vehicle appears to have exceeded its expectations in its performance.
The whole vehicle, the rocket, the European participation in the support module, the spacecraft itself, Orion, performing so well that they added a lot of tests. And lo and behold, we're going to be up to our ears in data, thankfully. And of course, today the two main things that had to happen was that that heat shield had to work, and it did beautifully, where they can skip off the atmosphere and bleed that speed down from 25,000 miles an hour. And then the parachutes had to work, and they did it as well.
You know, the engineering, the design of this mission, all the work that will go into the next flight when a crew is on board, right, to orbit the moon. What does this say about NASA and the international partner cooperation and the partnership that ultimately takes us not only to the moon but beyond?
Well, it says a lot about our country because we don't do it secretively. We do it openly, and we do it with our friends, and we invite all peoples of the earth. And we are doing it also with commercial partners, because when we go into orbit on Apollo 3, we are going to rendezvous and dock with in this case, SpaceX lander, and the crew will go down to the surface. And then we have another competition going on now for another lander, so that we will have two landers. And again, this is the program of going back to the moon to learn, to live, to invent, to create in order to explore beyond.
50 years ago today, Gene Cernan, Jack Schmitt landed their lunar module Challenger on Taurus Littrow, the final lunar landing. It only seems fitting half a century later to the day, Orion back home.
And what a fitting opportunity that I had last night to sit with Jack Schmitt at the astronaut dinner and to talk to him about those experiences. 50 years, it's a long time, but look what we have done in the meantime. The space shuttle, we built the International Space Station, we brought in commercial partners. We now go to and from regularly the International Space Station with cargo and crew. Here we go. We've got scouts going to the moon that are commercial scouts that land, that take NASA instruments and scientific instruments in preparing us for the landings of our astronauts. And so it's a new day. A new day has dawned. An Artemis generation is taking us there. And
Orion continues to await the arrival of the USS Portland, which shouldn't be very much longer from now, and some flight test objectives that will be taking place over the next couple of hours before we here in Houston hand the vehicle over to the Kennedy Space Center recovery team. NASA Administrator Bill Nelson, pleasure to see you today, and thank you so much for being with us.
What a day. Oh, it is my great privilege.